Hello, everybody. It's Summits with a Purpose in conversation with Jeannette McGill and myself, Saray Khumalo. I would like to first of all just talk about last week. We had technical issues, so episode 29 that was last week was moved to today. So this is episode 29. And in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about climbing seasons and a lot more, what Jeannette has been up to, what I've been up to. And I hope that you sit back and enjoy the ones that will join us on Facebook Live and the ones that will see it thereafter. Jeannette, how are you doing? I know it's midnight, your your space where you are. I hope that you don't doze on me today, but I'm so excited and glad to actually chat with you this afternoon and this morning on your side.
Hi there, and hi to everybody listening. It's great to be able to pop back in and check in on you and share with you where and what we've been doing on this side of the ocean. So yes, very early in the morning, but it's always an absolute pleasure to talk with you and engage with the Summits with a Purpose community. So looking forward to today's chat.
Thank you so much. What a year it's been, really. What have you been up to? I know Australia has been quite strict with the lockdowns and from the area to area. How has it affected you, and how have you been dealing with that?
Yeah, it's been a long road here, and I suppose the short way of answering you, what have I been doing, is a whole lot of nothing in one sense, in terms of actually getting out there, because I live in the part of Australia where we had a very intense lockdown for a very long period of time. So that definitely distorted how life went, but was able to catch up on my reading, able to dream around various projects and things like that. So that's been good. It's a big relief now that we are able to get out a bit more. And so therefore, rearing to go and being able to see when we can start traveling again. And we'll just have to see how that all pans out. But at least being able to touch base with you regularly and keep some motivation flowing. I think that those are always the important part of things. And also the conversations I'm able to have with various people around what their projects are going forward. And I love being able to help people in terms of what they want to do. So there's been more than enough to keep myself busy, even though maybe there hasn't been a mountain summit this year.
Yeah, I can imagine. And yeah, I think it's always a pleasure to touch base and find out how you're doing and just plan away. And for those of you that are going to stay until the end, you hear what we've been planning. And I hope that you get as excited about it as I am, and as I'm sure Jeannette is. So let's start on the climbing calendar, and that's really a loose word. And I'm using that in terms of mountains that are climbed generally, during certain periods of the year. I know that there's some that you can climb any time of the year, but there's certain windows that are like perfect for it, where the success rate is much higher, and so forth. And what we're going to touch on is the 7 summits, and then we'll touch on the 8,000ers, as well as the training peaks. So peaks that normally people go and climb, they're very popular. They use them as a training for either the 7 summits or any of the 8,000ers. Let's start with Jeannette. Maybe we can either look at the Northern Hemisphere and Southern Hemisphere, but maybe that would be a little bit complex. We just go January to December. So in terms of January to March, what are the most popular mountains that, generally people visit?
Firstly, thanks. And it's a great conversation to be having, because I think a lot of people are planning around what's next. So I hope what people get out of the next few minutes of our conversation is maybe that spark of something that we can go and consider on our calendars and can go and start researching. So definitely, yes, for the January months, it's winter in the Northern Hemisphere, obviously the middle of our summers. We like to be on the beach. But from an 8,000 meter perspective, what the goals are tending to be around winter. So winter is a difficult climbing season on the 8,000ers. It's generally exceptionally bitterly cold with significant winds. Not as bad, funny enough, as the monsoon season. That's when it's really unclimbable in the Himalayas. But the winter season is a season where historically, generally, people from Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia, these are the countries where people have been well adverse to being able to try mountains during the winter. And so once all the 14 8,000 meter mountains had been summited during, let's call it, the normal climbing seasons, people did turn their attention to going to have these harder winter expeditions. And so all the 8,000ers have been climbed except for K2. And so that's what we're busy watching at the moment, and we will be watching for the next few months. And that's what activities people can aim for if they themselves are interested in some hard mountaineering work, is to go and do one of these summits over the Northern Hemisphere winters. So let's watch and see what happens over K2. But then in the Southern Hemisphere, of course, you would know around some of the stuff that happens in Antarctica, right? So January tends to be the season where people tend to go down to Antarctica to do to Sidley, which is the volcano on the massif, either as well as and my brain's just gone absolutely blank.
Vincent,
there we go. I knew it.
Mount Vincent, as well as the last degree or the full 1,000 to ski to the South Pole. During that time, obviously, it's all light, no darkness. But January also tends to be good for Aconcagua. December, January, you find that people also attempt Aconcagua. It is windy, but it definitely has had some summit success during that period.
What I've also noticed with Aconcagua is that the season tends to have got a little bit later. So whereas over a good few years ago, people were going, especially over Christmas and New Year, when we generally had quite a lot of leave. But now I'm tending to see the successful summits are carrying through all the way into February. So anybody out there who wants to consider doing Aconcagua, maybe it's worth holding on to that Christmas leave just a little bit longer and going in February, because there's a lot of successful summits happening in February, because like you said, that's correct, it can be quite windy in January.
Yeah, it can be. Interesting. Anything in March?
So March is sort of the tail end of the winter. People are longing for spring, and really what starts happening in late March is back into the trekking season, because it's springtime, and that's where people start being able to trek to the base camp of a lot of these exciting mountains, and that's when the people start going through to Everest Base Camp in March. So March is early spring, and then you migrate into the spring season.
Yeah, it's actually interesting when you track on those trails. The trees will be flowering. It's actually very beautiful during that season. And then we go into April, May, which is the most popular Everest season compared to the later one in the year. What else happens during April, May, from what you've seen in terms of other 8,000ers around the world?
So yes, the seasons of spring and autumn, either side of the monsoon, is peak 8,000 meter season. That is when the very high jet stream winds will eventually move off the summit of the top of these mountains, making it possible for people to climb them. And so traditionally, this is where most people will go to Everest. A lot of the resources also go to Everest. You can appreciate there's a lot of people going out that way now. So in terms of, getting gear there, getting Sherpa support, the bulk of people do end up going to the Saray Khumalo and supporting the climbers on Everest. But, with the volume of people that have done Everest and have been able to progress beyond Everest and who want to still stay in mountaineering, they are looking to do other mountains at this time. So what we've seen is that the popularity of some of the other mountains surrounding Everest, Makalu, Kanchenjunga, Dhaulagiri, has started to pick up such that these other 8,000 meters are becoming very possible in the spring, and it's also spreading the load around these 8,000ers. So April, May, definitely 8,000er season in Nepal.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. Last year when I was on Everest, I think it's when we're coming down, we saw people summiting Pumuri, which is the first time. I mean, I had been 3 times before. I had never seen anyone on Pumuri. You're absolutely right in saying people have done Everest and now they're looking at what else can they do around the area. It's also a time where I find that it's quite packed in terms of climbers and really just tourists and trackers on those trails, going towards Everest. Maybe some people doing Labouche East, Island Peak, and many more. There's actually a lot more that people are able to do. And the guys that go to Everest Base Camp, they also do Kalapata, which I didn't know it was a thing until I started seeing it on people's resumes, which is just before Everest Base Camp. So that is April, May. But when we go into May, there is Denali, that you find that people now start going into North America, which is part of the 7 summits. Anything else that you can maybe touch on in terms of those periods before we move into the June, July, August, and September?
No, I think it's an important time of year. It's over Easter. People do tend to get vacations, and it's a great time to plan these trips, be it the trekking. So it's a great time to go to Everest Base Camp, as we've said. And then also, yes, to tackle some of the 6,000ers. That's a good way of getting some experience under one's belt.
Absolutely. I think it's also a good time for Mira Peak. I know you tried a winter ascent on Mira. I did it around May, and it was actually quite. The weather was great. There were quite a lot of people, and it was quite clear. Also, the other thing that's important is when you do it during the season where there's a lot of support, you actually are able to get help in case something goes wrong. Very easily and quite reasonably priced, as opposed to periods where there is not so much help. Most of the Nepali guys actually move up the mountain to service clients. They turn their houses into tea houses, expecting tourists to come through and climbers to come through, and you'll be able to get a lot of support should one want to go during that period. So Denali, it's May and June, and I'm hoping to do it next year during that period. And we now move into August, September, October. So do we? No. So.
Well, I think probably before that, but from a June perspective, and it's absolutely fantastic for you to have slipped in that nugget of information. I hope the listeners picked it up there, that it sounds fantastic that you're able to get some of your goals in your horizon around being able to complete the rest of the Explorers Grand Slam. So that's great news around Denali in June this year, coming up next year, I suppose, 2021. But don't forget that June, of course, is the middle of summer in the Northern Hemisphere. So there's some great mountains to be had from a training perspective. This is where a lot of people go to Europe, Chamonix, Mont Blanc. It's a great time to do some of that learning, as well as in South America. It's a fantastic time to go to Peru. I've always been a huge fan of the Cordillera Blanca around Huaraz, which is north of Lima, an absolute gem of mountaineering, and that's where El Pameo is. And it's a great learning ground as well. So there's been some fantastic climbing there that people can go definitely a bit more off the radar, and it's a great place to learn mountaineering. And then finally, of course, it's being able to do the big mountains of the Karakoram in the Northern Hemisphere summers. So we did mention, some people will be going for K2 in the winter, but the standard season when people generally go to the Karakoram to do those 5 8,000ers, so that would be Broad Peak, G1, G2, Gasherbrum 1, Gasherbrum 2, Nangba Parbat, and K2 is very much the June, July season. So that's when the Karakoram sees the most of that foot traffic, especially a lot of people doing the trek up the Baltoro Glacier to K2 base camp. So if you're looking for a rugged trek, that's definitely one that I would recommend in June, July as well.
Yeah, it's actually interesting you say that. If we come to maybe Kili as an example, you can effectively climb it any time of the year. But some months are better than others, depending on what you're looking for. The months when it's raining, but I know, for example, July, August, September would actually be great months where you're not going to necessarily get wet, as well as Elbrus. I know I did in September. I did Elbrus in September, and I believe that July, August to September is kind of a good month for good few months for Elbrus, for those that are interested. The only thing that I wonder about is what is the best time for Carsten's Pyramid? Do you want to touch on that? It's very close to where you are at the moment.
Yeah, so this opportunity to have a job that bases me in Australia does mean that some of these other places are a little bit closer temporarily at the moment. So we've got Kosciuszko, of course, here in South Africa, in Australia, as well as then Carsten's Pyramid. And depending on the list that people are doing for the 7 summits, most people these days often tend to do both of those mountains, which means that it ticks off both on the list. And Carsten's is very similar to Kili in that, you can do it all year round, but there is the rainy season, which is best avoided, but very much being able to come across for August or so is a great time to do that, as well as then Kosciuszko. Kosciuszko is an easy mountain. There's actually a road almost to the top of Kosciuszko, but the winter months can be very rigorous. When I moved to Australia, I thought, well, if I'm going to do Kosciuszko, I need to do it in winter, which is what I did, and I pulled some sleds, and I'm looking forward to being able to host you one day to be able to finally add Kosi to your Explorers Grand Slam list. But be assured, no matter what time of the year you do get to come here to do that, I'll definitely be able to go with you. That's one of those things that you can do any time of the year, like Carsten's as well.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to it. Customs for me has been moved from February 2020. It then was August, September. So I'm looking to hear when it's going to be. But definitely my plan is to do both Customs Pyramid as well as Kosciuszko, just for good measure. And I don't want any arguments with anybody that has it been done, has it not been done. It's like tick everything on the list. I'm that kind of girl. So then we move into October, November, and December. I know these are the very cold months. Some people try Everest during this time. You and I were chatting about it yesterday, about the fact that Everest, I think, was first summited in winter in 1980, I think. And then the last time it was summited is 1993, and it hasn't been since then during the winter months. Anything else interesting that happens during these months? Because I know you've also attempted an 8,000 during these months, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, so we've obviously got the fall season, which can, depending on the mountain, stretch out a little bit. So from an 8,000 meters perspective, the fall season, you need to have summited your mountains by October. That's when the jet stream will move back. So that's where there's a big season for the 8,000ers, and that's when a lot of people go and do mountains like Manaslu. And once again, you can probably do them in the spring, but as I'd said, most of the resources are towards Everest. So that's when in the spring season, the resources tend to open up. So people will go to Manaslu, they'll do the other mountains once again, like Kanchenjunga, Choyo, Dhaulagiri. So that is the season for that. As well as then later on in spring and very early winter. So that's October, November-ish. the lower mountains in the Himalayas are also back on stream. So this is where you see a lot of people going to places like Burunse, to Himlung, if you're wanting to do your 7,000 meter mountain. That is always good to do before an 8,000 meter at the moment, as well as the 6,000ers. So Amadablam is exceptionally popular in November. And yes, that's a great mountain to go. So my main Himalayan seasons do seem to be the spring and the fall. And that's when I hope to return.
Amada Blanc is on my bucket list. You know, the first time I just saw that mountain, I just fell in love with it. You know, and I think the naming conventions, people have told me different types, different ways of interpreting the name, but I absolutely love the mother and child. You know, it also looks like those African ornaments that people build. The one mountain that I'm actually curious about that I know you've attempted is Peak Lenin. You know, when is the right or the best season for it, for people to get the better chance? Is it an all year kind of mountain, or does it have specific periods when it's best to attempt it?
So it's a great mountain to talk about, and Peak Lenin is definitely done in the Northern Hemisphere summers. So that is a very similar season to when you would have done Elbrus. So it's very much in the same region and the same timing. So June, July, even into August sometimes, depending on the season. But that's definitely a mountain that I think is underrated in terms of experience gathering, because if people have got the opportunity and want to do 7,000ers, 8,000ers, it's about getting some of the snow experience under the belt. So I do know from an altitude perspective, a lot of people do tend to go to Aconcagua. And Aconcagua is a phenomenal mountain, great time of year to be able to go and do it when we in January, leave, etc. But never, I think, for me, it's about getting that exposure into some of the snow. So Peak Lenin is based in Kyrgyzstan, and you've got what are called the snow leopards. So it's the 5 highest mountains in Western Europe. And so Peak Lenin is one of the snow leopards. And it's a great way of getting some additional snow and ice experience. There's one ladder that you have to go across, and it's just over 7,000 meters. Summit day is a very long push, so anybody wanting to get some really good experience in a very culturally interesting environment, then I definitely add Peak Lenin to the list.
Yeah, that is interesting. And we go back to December. We talked about Aconcagua. I don't know if you have anything else on your list that is suitable for a December, November summit.
No, you see, I think for that time of the year, it's back to the mountains that you can do all year round. So that is when a lot of people start going back to places like Kilimanjaro, Ruwenzori's, Mount Kenya. It's sort of at the end of the long rains. And so it's a good time to be able to use some of that Christmas leave to go and experience the African continent for what it's worth as well, you know. And it's a time of year where personally I love going to the Drakensberg in the summer. The days are longer. You can go and swim in the rivers. In Jasuti, I love. Giant's Castle, I love. So for me, it's always a time of year. It's around grounding and being at home again. So as soon as I can get back onto an airplane, I would love to be able to come back and spend some summer time in the Drakensberg.
We might need you vaccinated before you come over. You know what we missed out in terms of, well, it's not a mountain really, it's part of the Grand Slam, is the North Pole, which is done during April. And from what I've picked up and all the inquiries that I've done, they generally have 2 groups, a group that starts at the beginning of April and the group that does the last degree at the end of April. I think that's a very good idea of what you can do for the 7 summits, what you can do with the 8,000ers, and a few of, preparation. I think this is very important. I don't know if I mentioned to you that I actually rocked up on Chamonix hoping to do Mont Blanc in October, and the mountain was closed. So it's always important to know actually what is open and what is not, and what are the chances. So it was meant to be open, but the weather was quite bad. And one would have to know beforehand to say around October, it may be or maybe not open. And the aim was really to train. So it wasn't a train smash. It wasn't about climbing. And I'm sure if the aim was to summit it, we would have planned a little differently. Yeah, so before I move on to what you are going to do for 2021, is there anything that you probably would like to touch on based on the calendar and some of the exciting opportunities that are there in terms of those that want to do some adventure or climbing?
I think that in the world of mountaineering, there is so much available to us, and this quieter COVID time probably is a really good opportunity to understand what is important for you to do for your own reason. I think that there's a lot of lists out there, there's a lot of mountains out there, and so there's enough to go around for everybody, and it's not a competition out there. It's a bit of soul searching and time to be in the mountains and the outdoors. And so I'd definitely encourage people to look at the mountains that we've just discussed and to see, what sounds interesting, what sounds like a good thing to start exploring and doing, and there's so much to entertain oneself there. And I hope people picked up there in what you were talking around in terms of what's on your horizons, and we're so excited around being able to follow you as you complete the Explorers Grand Slam. And you mentioned right at the end there the North Pole, and I think that must be an absolutely exciting place to go to. And is that probably the next thing on your Explorers Grand Slam radar? And if so, how's the training been going for that?
So it's it is the next one. I received my schedule a few days ago, about 4 days ago, and it's scheduled for April. It was postponed from this past April to next April. Considering that everything is fine, we can fly internationally, and and if there's quarantine required, we need to build that into the climbs. I should be going beginning of April. The training, basic training is there. I haven't started pulling tires yet, but that's something that I'm hoping to start from December onwards. The one thing, though, that I learned from the South Pole is almost consistent training. It's about stamina more than anything, There is no rest. It's for sometimes, the longest period we did was about 12 hours. 12 hours of 1 hour pulling your sledge, and skiing, 10 minutes rest, 1 hour, 10 minutes rest. So it's longer hiking with heavy stuff that I need to start doing, as opposed to being fast and being strong for 4 hours. A marathon might not cut it, an ultra marathon kind of thing. So that is something that I did not expect until I got to the South Pole. And I believe the North Pole would require something similar. The other thing that I obviously need to watch out for, it's a lot colder than the South Pole. And having been frostbitten previously, I need to obviously watch out for that and make sure that I'm able to manage the cold well in that respect. Metsi, welcome as usual, and thank you. I'm glad that you are enjoying this. Metsi has a question for you. I don't know if you can see that. Says, do you still intend to do Himlo? I think you mentioned it. She's got it on her bucket list for the first 7,000. So maybe if you can talk a little bit more about it. I don't know if you've done it or you plan to do it, and she would like to know a little bit more about that.
So hi, Metsi. Thank you so much for joining us today, and can't wait. Unfortunately, yes, our plans were destroyed because of COVID, but everything, happens at the right time. So definitely looking forward to being able to go to Himlung. And Himlung is probably a mountain that some of you might not be all that familiar with. In the 7,000 realm, we were talking around Peak Lennon, but in a Nepalese sense, the 7,000 meter mountain that a lot of people would be going to do is Barunse. Barunse is in beyond Mera. It's put up between Mera and Island Peak on the far eastern side of the Saray Khumalo. And what we've seen in Nepal is that because people are getting a lot stricter around being able to prove your capability before you sign up for an 8,000 meter mountain, they are looking that you've had evidence that you've climbed a 7,000 meter mountain before you go for an 8,000 meter mountain. So in that 7,000 meter realm, we've mentioned Aconcagua, we've mentioned Peak Lenin. And what also happened in Nepal was that the Nepalese government opened up a range of mountains that not necessarily were allowed to be climbed, and they didn't have climbing permits previously. And so they've also gone a long way to promote tourism and to promote climbing in Nepal by opening up some of these other mountains. So Himlung is fairly remote. There's a long trek to get to it. It's west in Nepal, and it's definitely a phenomenal mountain to go to. It's not that technically challenging, but it gives everybody the idea of around doing rotations, working through a glacier, a very small ice wall. And so for somebody who's wanting to get this experience, definitely a phenomenal mountain to do. And it's a mountain that one does in the spring and as well as in the fall months. And so then, yes, Metsi, Himlung, definitely still on the calendar. So keep watching this space.
Fantastic. So which months exactly?
So Himlung is generally good to do August, September, October, depending on how many people are involved with the other mountains. On the 8,000ers, depends on where staff is available to come through. But generally, Himlung is September, October.
So she asked a follow-up question, how would you rate it compared to Peak Lenin?
Now there's an interesting question. I think it's really hard. You're trying to ask me to pick my favorite child. So for me, it's around getting that exposure in different climates and things like that. The difference between Himlung and Peak Lenin has a very long summit day. And so therefore the summit statistics of Peak Lenin are not that high in terms of getting to the summit because there's an immense long summit day. Himlung, of course, is going to get impacted by the winds. So I know that the team that went this year that snuck in there weren't able to go and summit because of the winds. Very much the same, similar pricing as well. But being somebody that absolutely loves Nepal, I think I would always vote for Nepal.
Yeah. I haven't been to Himlung. I think I must look into it. It sounds like an amazing. I didn't know it had a waterfall, so thank you for sharing that. Anna, thank you so much for the compliment and the kind words and for joining us. I appreciate that. Samantha, thank you. Samantha says you ladies are inspirational. Let's go to your plans for 2021. I know that Dalagiri is on your radar. You are the first South African, both male and female, to attempt it previously. Do we see it on the horizon for the coming season? And if so, when, how are you training for it with all the lockdowns?
I think we're in the same boat there a bit. You know, you'd said that, you've got to start pulling the tires, working on some of that endurance, and probably in the same boat. And yes, so thanks for the support. I attempted Dalagiri in the fall of 2019, and that very much stays on my radar. I'm definitely wanting to grow my skills in my 8,000 meter portfolio, and so I had chosen Dalagiri as my next 8,000er, and it was only after I'd sort of got there that I'd realized that no South African had ever even attempted this mountain before. So whilst that is a massive privilege, my personal focus is very much around being able to get additional exposure with these 8,000 meter mountains, being able to manage the oxygen, being able to manage the technical aspects of it. So Dalagiri is a phenomenal mountain. It's the most furthest west 8,000er in Nepal before you get far west into the Karakoram. The closest other mountain that you have close to it is the Annapurnas. And so you access Dalagiri very similar than you would to Annapurna. So we did some pre-acclimatization as part of the Annapurna trek. You fly into Jomsom, you come via Pokhara, so it gives you an amazing exposure to a different portion of Nepal. So not the traditional Solo Khumbu through Lukla and Namche Bazaar. This is further to the west than that. And the interesting thing about Dhaulagiri is that it's one of the few standalone 8,000ers. So it's this prominent peak in the middle of this area, and it's so well defined, and it's a really stunning mountain. A little bit of history in that there was sort of this race on to be the first 8,000 meter mountain that people would climb back in the day. So of course we know that Everest was climbed in 1953 for the first time, but actually the first 8,000 ever to be climbed was by the French. It was the Annapurnas that they actually climbed prior to this in the early 1950s. And they actually got mixed up between Dhaulagiri and Annapurna. The maps were so rudimentary at this time that the maps were probably a bit wrong. And so they attempted to do Dhaulagiri, and the access was so difficult and complex that they actually went and did Annapurna instead of Dhaulagiri. So Dhaulagiri was actually the first 8,000 that people were trying to get to, but it's quite a complex access pathway to it. And there's this feature on Dhaulagiri called the Eiger. So it looks like the north face of the Eiger, apparently. I haven't seen the north face of the Eiger, so I can't justify this. But nevertheless, it's this vertical wall where avalanches and rocks just fall down during the course of the day. So we start really early in the morning with Dhaulagiri, and you've got to scamper on past the bottom of this Eiger section until you get into the icefall proper. So it's always a bit exciting when you come through this portion of the mountain, and people do know that it's quite dangerous, and then you can get onto the main portion of the glacier and carry on climbing the mountain. So the height, it's 8,167 meters. It's the 7th highest mountain in the world. And yes, I would dearly love it if I do get a second chance at climbing this mountain. And my intention is to hopefully go and do it in the spring month, so spring of next year. And as we've already joked about, hopefully we can travel from Australia. And so this is all still in a bit of the balance around what happens with COVID. But I can't just get from my couch to the mountains. So like you, the two of us are going to be checking in with each other around how our training's going, and keep motivating each other as we've done over the years already.
I'm just smiling because we both have started training with our personal trainers using Zoom. So it's interesting. There is no excuse. Where there's a will, there's always a way. You make a plan. So some things I'm doing on my own. I know you're also on a call with your personal trainer that's still based in South Africa, I believe, to keep going. I think there is nothing as terrible as being on the mountain and you wish you had woken up and just did that one hike. Maybe that's why you're not doing so great on that specific day. And being on the mountain and thinking like that is not something that I would wish on anybody or on myself. That's why I keep pushing. Hey, Delia, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you're doing well in Durban. So
you had actually used a very good word there, though, if I can quickly jump in there. And previously you'd spoken around consistency. And I think for a lot of people that ask me around, hey, Jeannette, how do I start? What do I do? I was working with a lady who really struggled to even walk to the corner shop to go and buy herself a cool drink and a packet of chips. She wouldn't even get off the couch to do this. And eventually, through a bit of time, through a bit of training, being able to get her to do a far more substantive walk a few months later. And for that, it was around consistency, being able to just do something small absolutely every day. And a lot of people know my story around how put on quite a lot of weight, and I was also struggling to get going again. And the trainer that I still do use, yes, thanks to Zach van Heerden, it's around the consistency of just getting up every morning and literally just walking around the block. So you would know from all of our mountaineering that it's not these big things. It's you don't jump immediately onto the side of these big mountains, but it's those little consistent efforts that you do every day. And even if it is just for half an hour, 20 minutes walking around the block, that is what's going to get you to your goal at the end of the day. So as you and I like to keep saying, just keep stepping.
Absolutely. Keep stepping. And I think that's what is important. Every step counts. Nobody that has ever stopped stepping has ever crossed any finish line, whether it's running, whether it's in business, whether it's school, and whether it's on the mountain. It's exactly the same. And your training is exactly that. Today, you're able to do 1 kilometer. But rest assured that if you keep stepping, tomorrow you'll be able to do 2. And who knows, we'll find you at the Soweto Marathon doing the Soweto Marathon. Or maybe Everest Marathon, which is something that I know a few South Africans have had the privilege of doing. So, Jeannette, in terms of your training, I know you do some with your personal trainer. And I also believe, I don't know if I'm supposed to share, you've decided to move house into the mountains. So what's your schedule like? I mean, what's your week like in terms of training? Or what do you plan to do if you're not there yet?
Yeah, for me, it's very much around that word of consistency. So I generally build my training up. It's a pyramid that you have to have a very firm base and keep on going. And, I think we joked around this when we did our function 2 years ago now around people's different approaches to training. And as a lot of people know, I'm not a runner. You've been blessed with those running genes, and congratulations for all of those events that you've been able to complete. But I'm somebody that really enjoys just slogging it out and being able to have the stamina. And so whilst, yes, if you probably had a cheetah chasing me, I would launch into a run. But I'm somebody that just keeps on going methodically through this. So my training that I end up doing is very much around being able to spend time in the mornings, in the afternoons as well, comes up to twice a day, being able to just have time on my feet with a backpack. So it's stepping up duration, intensity, being able to carry increasing weights in my backpack as I go on different training things. And so therefore, yes, being able to be located that bit closer to the outdoors is something which I'm really very grateful to be able to do now, in that the mountains right on my doorstep, which means that I can just regularly get out there and keep my training ticking over. But, the important thing with this mountaineering, especially the 8,000 meter mountains, is around the consistency and the duration. So when I'm really in the thick of training, it tends to be very long days, 8, 9, 10 hours training at a consistent heart rate, being able to just keep going. As you say, that's what's required of us. And so I tend to train by what is required of me on the 8,000 meter mountains. And because I'm personally not going to be running up any of these, I tend to just train as I'm needing to do the 8,000ers. It's training for mountaineering, though, and you can attest to this as well, is probably one of the more lonely things one can do, in that we always appreciate having our friends and a network that we can draw on. And I know similarly for me, you've also got a range of people that step in and join you on your training walks. I love having people that will just decide to come along with me. And a lot of people say, you're training for an 8,000, it will never keep up. And for me, it's not around that. I can train all the time, no matter who decides to put on a backpack and join me. And I think that that's something which I really value when I'm training, is the camaraderie of having people around me. And you're right, with this new modern Zoom days, it's great to be able to check in with you weekly and be able to see where we are at. And some weeks I'm a bit low, some weeks you've been a bit busy, but nevertheless, we can keep motivating ourselves. So I would encourage everybody out there to tackle this. Don't think it's a lonely space. Find some friends, and to find anybody that you can chat to, even if it is over a camera.
Absolutely. There is actually a lot more people that are interested in hiking and the outdoors compared to when I started. You also find that during these hikes or training sessions, you pick up a lot of tips on what's working for other people, stuff that you can try out. You learn about new mountains that you can add on your bucket list. So that's maybe a problem to your financial situation there. But it's actually fun. And it's people with diverse expertise, experience. And it's just really amazing people that I've been able to meet through this journey. So really exciting. And I wouldn't have met you, Jeannette, if it wasn't for for climbing and Facebook.
Exactly. Exactly. You're so right. I think maybe the listeners probably don't realize it took what, I think a year, more than a year before you and I met actually face to face. We'd had a completely virtual friendship, and it was fantastic to turn it into reality. And then the majority of our friendship is through these screens. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Anyway, so we did promise to, I promised to keep you for 30 minutes, and I see we're 45 minutes. So thank you for keeping it together for us, Jeannette, and keeping us informed as always. So Jeannette and I have been working on a project to start taking women, especially, on some of these expeditions. And I would like Jeannette maybe to talk to it. The ethos, you've guided a few people on Kilimanjaro, Everest Base Camp, Island Peak, and others that you've done. If you can talk a little bit more about it, and I'll chip in if I can, but I would love for you to maybe just introduce it. What is it called? What is it about? And who is the target market?
Thank you. And it's really exciting to be able to share the culmination of you and I working in a variety of projects where we've seen that there's an enormous community out there, and an opportunity for us to impart both of our knowledge and both of our experience and partner and do this collectively. So, it's absolutely fantastic that we can today talk around Umoja destinations, and it's really great to be able to have an organization and a platform that brings people together. And so, Umoja, Swahili word, and unity, coming together. And we really do believe that this is something which we support, and being able to bring various people together who can also gain from the outdoors what we have gained in our careers in the outdoors. And it's that camaraderie, it's that self-leadership, and it's that ability that one creates through being able to be in the outdoors. And so, yes, being able to work with you on a portfolio of places, on offerings, of being able to continue to build a community that can go and enjoy the outdoors. So a platform for opportunities around Kilimanjaro, Everest Base Camp, and a whole lot more, but very much being able to be supported by your skills, your enthusiasm, your experience, as well as my skills, my enthusiasm as well. And I'm really looking forward to being able to be in the outdoors together with you and the groups that choose to join us with Umoja Destinations.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So Umoja, unity. I think nobody gets to the top on their own. I just have found that a lot of these climbs, you may be in a group with other people. They really say that it's not the mountain that you conquer, it's yourself. But you discover who you are a lot more. It happened to me in 2012 on Kilimanjaro. Everest Base Camp gets me every time. I'm out there. It's such an amazing opportunity to be able to do this. We are not planning to only take very fit people. We're planning to take people that can gradually train. We work with them. We are going to be able to tell you that maybe you're not ready, and I'm hoping that you'll be comfortable with that, because for us, it's going to be about getting everybody to achieve that dream. And I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope that more and more of you are able to join us. We do already have a group that we plan to take with this coming season. We hope that you're able to follow and come with us whenever you can. Team building, we're there. I think we are combining our corporate experience, our leadership experience, as well as the experience that we've had in the outdoor to give you an amazing experience. It is called Umoja Destinations. Anything else, Jeannette?
No, I'm really excited to be able to bring this nexus of our careers, of our leadership, of being able to just help people along. I think what we've always spoken around, you and I, is that how much you've had to be a groundbreaker because you didn't know where to start. I've had to gradually learn also, through the years. I was one of the few women doing this, and so often you just don't know where to start. So I think you and I have come at this from different trajectories, but nevertheless the similarity is that we've actually had to figure out for ourselves of this whole journey what to do. And so there's a bit of time wastage in that. And so for us to be able to say around unity, how we can help people to really immerse themselves and be able to do the self-discovery and learn from people who've probably taken the long way, and definitely be able to join us and learn the tricks, and thereby increase the enjoyment around the outdoors. So thank you, and looking forward to 2021 and being able to take our amazing group to Everest Base Camp.
Exactly. One of the other exciting things that happened, I know we chatted on here with Malette and Nick and Z, was the project that we started when doing the 9 peaks around South Africa to train some women that are from the foot of the Drakensberg to become guides. So we managed to train 3 women, I think last month the training happened. And I'm hoping that when we do some of these climbs or some of these treks, we're able to go back in our own backyard and be trained by our own ladies to ensure that we prepare for Everest Base Camp, for Kilimanjaro, or any other climbs that we have planned. I'm so looking forward to this. I'm so looking forward to the passion and the love that I found in the outdoors to share with you. If you would like to come in and join us. So Karen Mayer says, would love to join you on a hike or climb. Let us know when your website is up. We definitely will. It will be before the end of the year. I'm glad I can't see Jeanette's eyes there. She's probably popping them up. And we'll keep you posted on Summits with a Purpose. The other thing that we haven't mentioned is some of the proceeds of all the climbs of everybody that we take will go to charity. This is something that I've always done with all my climbs, raising money. Jeannette joined me in that. It is Summits with a Purpose, and by joining us, you'll be able to also make a difference in terms of education. And I would love to see you there. Jeannette, thank you so much for joining me. And before I let you go, is there anything that you would like to say as the last thing? When are you coming home, maybe before you actually say anything?
Desperately want to come home, but flying is not that easy at this time. I would always try and be back in February. There's nothing better, quite frankly, than being in the Western Cape during February, those long summer days. So being a PE girl, being able to put my feet back in the sea is something that I always look forward to, but let's see how that pans out. And want to just end by thanking you, allowing me to hop on here again, catch up. You've had an amazing portfolio of guests over the past few months. I find it inspiring. I know that the audience does, and so therefore the opportunity for you and I just to chat a little bit more, for me to unpack for our audience some of the exciting things that you have in store for 2021. I know how frustrating it's been that you've had to have your goals on hold as well. So I'd like to also thank you for sharing with myself and the audience around what's next for you. So looking forward to being able to follow you with the North Pole, being able to welcome you for Kosciuszko, being able to look at Carsten. So there's definitely some exciting 2021 things. And then, yes, for me, for my Dalagiri. So I hope that the listeners have been inspired around what's available on the calendar. And definitely do look at Umoja Destinations on the socials for how you can join either of us going forward as well.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you, everybody. Delia, as well as Karen, and anybody else that's going to watch this hereafter. Thank you for joining us, and I hope that you have an amazing, amazing Sunday further, as well as the resolute to keep stepping, because nobody ever succeeds by stopping. Thank you, and God bless.